This week on the SaaSy Sales Podcast, we meet Chris Wheeler, who's Chief of Staff over at GitHub, now a division of Microsoft. We're going to learn about what exactly is the Chief of Staff, how they define it over at Microsoft and GitHub. We'll learn about what enterprise aspiring sales reps might want to do early in their career to get ready for the role. And lastly, we'll talk about what Chris sees as the defining characteristics in the most successful managers and reps. Let's get into it. Chris, really fantastic to have you with me today. Super excited for this chat.
Yeah, pleasure. Appreciate you taking the time.
We've been friends for a few years now, right? When did I first meet you? 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, it was right before Stackless. So that'd have to be maybe coming up on 5, perhaps, a little over 4. Wow,
this is time for an anniversary. Just so you know, I like something sort of small and expensive. Just if you're thinking about gifts, that'd be good.
I heard tequila's your thing.
Perfect. All right, we're talking about your career today. So you're at GitHub, now a division of Microsoft. So it'd be really helpful for the people on the line here to learn who's GitHub, who do you sell to, and what you do for your customers.
Yeah. So GitHub is a software development platform. We're selling to development organizations. So our main decision makers at the top of the hierarchy there would be CIO, CTO, CISO, those types of individuals. And what we do is we're an end-to-end development platform. So, all the way from idea to actually publishing to the cloud, we're going to be that software development platform for our users.
Got it. Now, I'm assuming you're not the person who's stocking the snack cart right now. What's your role there?
Yes, I'm the Chief of Staff for the sales organization there.
Chief of Staff. So this is a title and a role that I'm hearing more and more of. So I want to dig into that later and learn a little bit more about it, and particularly the strategic nature of that role as it's evolving. But let's talk about your journey to start with. So I remember looking at your profile and seeing that you were an enterprise AE manager back in the day at Marcom Central. You took a few roles as head of sales development of quite small companies with less than 100 employees, all the way up to joining GitHub, where you're a director and you grew the team to over 50 people. Can you help people understand the difference in your experience between some of those smaller organizations and kind of what life is like versus, say, a larger, more resourced organization like a GitHub?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the life at the smaller organizations isn't that different in my experience. And I think that comes from GitHub is unique in that the sales team has been around for probably about 7 years now. The overall organization is maybe about 11, 12 years old. And so many of the same problems that we were having at the startups when I was working at these small companies, we're working through them now, just with more money, more people, more scale. And so I think that the experience at the startup was just absolutely invaluable. I'm now a big company guy. I'll work for large companies for the remainder of my career. That's because I'm, have a family and like a lot of the perks and the stability that comes with that. But the learning that I got at the smaller companies was just truly invaluable. You wear many hats. Like, I'm really good. I can speak the same language as our sales ops organization oftentimes because I was the Salesforce administrator at times at these previous companies. And that's not something that you get at large companies. The job descriptions become more narrow as the company gets larger. And so, I think the thing that I loved the most was working in the small startups is the mentality of just having to wear many hats and just get the job done. Because if you don't get the job done, there may not be a company much longer. And so that pressure to perform, at times unpleasant, I think is something that is very important in people's careers. And so I got that at a Series A company and then a Series B company. And that I think that set me up to be able to come in and really, really perform and have a big and a wide impact at GitHub.
Well, really interesting, and feel free to disagree with me. One of my perspectives, I certainly say this to enterprise sales reps. I say, if you want to sell to enterprise early in your career, go work for a bigger company, because then you'll understand how things get done, right? If you're selling to small companies, and you're working for small companies, you have every expectation that you can get a sales cycle done with one or two stakeholders and boom. But if you work for IBM or Microsoft, you soon realize that there's, all these processes, the fact that the budget approval committee only meets once a month for technology, all these sorts of things. And in these big companies, to your point, you get a whole bunch of training and process drilled into you, which you can then translate to a smaller company experience. But what do you think? Do you think it's important which order you do it in, or does it not really matter?
I think that it depends on where you're landing in the organization. If you're a career enterprise sales rep that's going to go and try to be a VP of sales at a startup, I don't know that that may not be the best order, because there's a lot that you haven't done, if that makes sense. I think as a VP of sales at a really small company, you have to wear many hats. Like, you are sales enablement now, perhaps. You might be hiring your first sales operations individual. And so I think that the smaller companies will give you much more breadth and a small amount of depth on that kind of stuff. But you're absolutely right when it comes to selling. As like, I sold enterprise for a small company, and I think I did a pretty good job. I understood the nature of being single threaded. I understood, OpEx budget, things of that nature. But the depth and scale of an enterprise deal with some of the companies that we're working at is vastly different than anything that I came across earlier in my career. The structure, a great example is one of our strategic account managers. That's the highest level sales rep that you can be within GitHub. They closed a deal with one of the largest companies in the world, happens to be in the Bay Area here, and they had over 50 influencers in that deal. And that's not uncommon. We've closed deals with large auto manufacturers, and it's very similar, where it might be we had to speak to 40, 45 different influencers and go across multiple budgets. So it's not just one person, offering up the budget. It might be 10 different budgets. And that is very different than what I did earlier in my career, even as an enterprise rep and leading enterprise teams. And so I think that, I think it depends on, there's a lot of value from both sides of that coin. Getting that structure from the large organization, you can come in and be vastly impactful from a maturity perspective. But then getting that scrappiness and wearing many hats from the small company, that can allow you to actually be more influential in a larger company, because you actually know what your cross-functional peers are doing, and you can have some credibility with them, and you can get more done. So
I think we're actually perfectly aligned on this. I tell people, go to big companies for a short amount of time to see how it works, but get the heck out of there before you become institutionalized. And to your point, go in as an individual contributor into these small companies, because frankly, a large company executive or middle management experience translates very poorly to smaller companies. Come in as that really credible enterprise rep I see in a small company, get exposed to all the things you're exposed to, knowing what you know, and then to your point, grow up within the startup community and be much more effective if you ever choose to go back to a large company.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, you nailed it. And let's talk about that. You really have done exceptionally well at GitHub and been recognized for the performance of your team, and as a result got promoted to the chief of staff role. Most people don't know what the heck a chief of staff does. So can we talk about that? Like literally, I'd love to start with what your accountabilities are, like, how you're measured, your success is measured. And then if you could just share with everybody, what do you do day to day? Just so we get a picture for it.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the reason no one knows what we do is because it's different with every leader and every organization. There's some spots where the chief of staff is going to be very administrative. Some companies where that job title even quite literally just manages all the executive assistants within the organization. My chief of staff role is much more strategic. So I would not have been able to get this job if I didn't prove that I could execute, but then also have that sales leader mentality that I had earlier from my career. So what I'm responsible for, I run the rhythm of the business. So that will be our sales leadership team offsites, our recurring. I'm actually, to boil that down even more, I am responsible for the sales leadership team operating at a high level and with a high level of accountability to get our work done. So that is the rhythm of the business, the meetings, the inputs, all of that kind of stuff. Next to that is going to be, I'm responsible for our goal planning and OKR functions. So objectives and key results. That's the goal structure that we use internally. And so I'm responsible for all of that. I've been iterating it over the last 6 months, trying to get us to higher and higher efficiency and ownership and accountability with it. And then the last bit, I'm also I'm responsible for like strategic planning and analytics. And that could be a lot of firefighting too. So I think of it as 3 buckets. The strategy part is the part that I like the most, but then the problem solving aspect of that bucket is also really interesting. So my day is different every single day. I could, and it can change at a moment's notice. I can have a nice, neat list of what I want to get done on that day, and I'll get a Slack message or a call from my boss, and there's something I need to attend to, and it might take me the rest of the day. And so, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of very, very interesting work. It is a tremendous amount of cross-functional work. And I think to put it the simplest possible way to describe it, I'm an overlay for the senior VP of sales. I am a stand-in. I've been seeing the word force multiplier out there a lot recently. I can make sure that work gets done, that we are aligned, because I have just as many conversations with our sales leadership team, sales management organization as she does. And so it's effectively multiplying her ability to maintain alignment and drive work.
Got it. Fascinating. Big, interesting role. And as part of that promotion, around about the same time, you and I have a shared experience, and that we've both worked for companies that got acquired by Microsoft. And I know that every acquisition they make, they get better at it. Can you just share with folks, how long ago did you get acquired, and what has it been like? Would love to know a little bit about the opportunities that may have opened up as a result of being part of the Microsoft family.
Yeah. So let's see. The announcement was probably close to 2 years ago, maybe. But the actual close of the deal was probably a year to a year and a half ago or so. So we're getting to a point where we're starting to get into a good rhythm with them. To your point, they've gotten better and better and better. They're very transparent about using the LinkedIn acquisition as a blueprint for how to handle GitHub. GitHub, we have the community of open source developers on our platform. We have over 40 million developers, and that comes with an incredible amount of responsibility to not mess that up. And so Microsoft's been fantastic in that Satya the CEO of Microsoft says very plainly that Microsoft's role here is to accelerate GitHub. And so it's really left us alone. There's certain areas where we need to grow up quickly. A lot of that has to do with financial operations and things of that nature, because now we're a part of a publicly traded company. And then the only other thing that I've felt is we get exposure to some incredible executives over there. We have these meetings where we need to report up our results, our initiatives, what we're really focused on, and they ask the like fascinating, in-depth questions. And one of the perks of my job is I get to be a part of that. I have to prepare for those meetings. I have to create the material, and I get to be engaged with these people. And so I would say that it's this maturity that happens because you're now a part of a very big company that you wouldn't otherwise get. Our CFO would have to give you a really direct answer, but I would bet that it might take us 3 to 5 years just left alone to get to where we are right now, from a lot of that, financial controls, deal desk, like a lot of the operational side of things. So it's been really interesting to see. From a pure, from like a day-to-day operations perspective for like the, individual contributor or anything like that, you really don't notice a difference. They've really kind of, treated us as independent. And it's been a great experience, honestly.
Oh, it's great. It's funny. It reminds me of the time I was at Yammer. Everyone was terrified of the annual planning get-togethers. We would go up to Redmond. The COO back then, JT, I think. You would have the big tent and the little tent. They called that. Little tent was where you kind of got together, got your story straight, and then you stepped in front of everybody and put your flak jacket on. And, one of my friends has been at Microsoft for over 20 years, and he says, you'll do the same thing 2 years in a row. 1 year, you'll be an idiot. The next year, you're a genius. So it can be quite a lot of pressure. Yeah.
There's certainly some pressure that comes with it, but I think that I would rather have this pressure than the running out of money pressure that you get at the smaller company. So
I'm with you on that. Now, look, you've seen a lot of management, people in management over your career, and in particular now with your role, you've got a nice oversight of both SDR, AE, CS, all that good stuff. What are the key behaviors or skills that you're looking for as a senior leader now in terms of the best SDR and AE leaders in a team? What are the common threads that you're observing?
Yeah, I really believe strongly in hiring for intangibles. When I was the director of global sales dev at GitHub, we had a pretty remarkable run there where I hired over 50 people and grew the team to about that size. And we really had, I'd have to think back pretty hard. I think we only had 2 or 3 hires that didn't work out of those numbers. And we promoted over 30 people in not quite 2 years. And so I think that I really like that. That was a strong indicator that if you find people with like the right building blocks as human beings, it vastly outweighs a college, where they went to college or where they were at their most recent company. We've had individuals that on paper made a lot of sense, actually didn't work that hard or didn't have that chip on their shoulder to, try to get in before their boss. Like the little things that, that like really make someone a great rep. Because I personally believe that I spent the early part of my career in like selling into education. And then I got into marketing technology, and now I'm in the developer tool stack. And I wish I'd spent my entire career here because this is a great place to be. But my point is, I really believe that anyone can learn to do anything. And so what I really look for in AEs and SDRs is hustle, like hard work. Like you need to have something. Some of my favorite candidates have been people that, we had one guy that was just a rock star, and he worked on the oil fields of Southern California. Like turns out there are oil fields down there. We have other people that have worked construction, even just simple stuff like, working your way through college. That's hard. Then athletes are fantastic. Dancers are amazing. Just like, getting that hard work, that like hustle that is just innate to you is incredibly important, because teaching someone to work hard is pretty tough. But having needing to pull someone back in the name of balance, that's way easier. The other part is really growth mindset. or curiosity, I think is another way to put that. And I've articulated a lot as I need reps that own their own development, because we're a pretty big buttoned up company. Maybe we're not, maybe we're a small company. We need you to come in and train yourself. And then we're going to work really hard to also train you and give you guardrails. But if you work to learn every single day, and I tell young reps all the time, don't leave the office until you learn something new. That's going to set you apart as an outlier over the course of your career. I personally learned something new every single day, and it's just by the nature of my job. And if I feel like I didn't learn something that day, I'm going to go look for something, because a lifetime of that is going to put you way ahead of someone that just sat back and received POs as as a rep. And so I think that finding someone that's going to work hard and is going to own learning every single day, it's pretty easy to build a successful team when you have a room full of those people. And the last checkpoint is really just making sure that there's something other than words that points to they want a career in sales, because it's really hard to be a sales dev rep. It's pretty hard to be a corporate sales, like an SMB rep as well. And so something that says that, you want to be here, that's more centered in actions, or, perhaps a small track record or something like that, I think is important as well. But the first two, hiring for intangibles, that's critical to me.
Makes a ton of sense. And so then leading perhaps toward the end of our chat, I always like to know a little bit about your personal philosophy when it comes to it. Clearly, I'm listening to you, hearing you about the growth mindset, the constant learning and development. Is there anything else you'd want to share with the group?
Yeah, I think that my personal, in roles like in sales leadership roles or chief of staff role, actually really any role I've had, my goal is to always be known for execution and for accountability. And so my goal has always been that if my boss asks me to do something once, I want to make sure that they don't have to ask me to do it a second time, that it gets done. I've taken that into my current role, and I remember that one moment in 6 months where my boss had to ask me to do something a second time, and the way that she delivered it, I could tell she almost felt awkward about it, because it's the first time that I had ever put her in that position, and it hasn't happened since. And so, being accountable to why you're there, I think that that's the biggest thing, and getting your work done and getting it done at a really high level, a high quality. Something I've learned from my current boss, she is very detail oriented and holds herself to a very, very high level, like a true outlier level. That's really forced me, that level of detail has really forced me to level up, and I think has made me a lot better at my job and then future unknown careers as well. So I think attention to detail, holding yourself to perhaps irrationally high standards because you're the only one doing it at times, and then making sure that you always execute at a high level, you execute on time. That's something I really strive to put together.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it makes me think of one of the best enterprise account executives I've ever met, who in fact did an interview for SaaSy, and he used the same language you did around accountability and setting unreasonable goals, right? And going after those. And I think you're very lucky in that you are working with a leader who sounds like consistently setting stretch goals for herself, and therefore by relationship, her team, which is great. So I got a bonus question I like to ask everyone, my friend. You've been around the SaaSy sales community for several years now. Yep. And I like to know, how has that changed or affected your professional experience?
I think the learning that comes out of it is great, but there's, a lot of ways you can go find that. I think the people and the relationships has been the real game changer for me. I learned a lot in going through I think I was in the first frontline boot camp. I learned a ton, but the thing that has really stuck with me is those people. So like I'm working hard to try to get Annalise a job at GitHub right now. And those human beings, and being able to ping them with a question or, bounce an idea off of them that you think maybe is a little bit crazy, or, even like the career network that comes out of it too. is a really big deal to me. And I think that like being able to just grow that and expand that with the success that SaaSy has seen is really exciting to me. I need to do a better job of getting outside of my core group that I've interacted with. But the Slack channel, I don't comment too often, but I'm in there reading quite a bit. And I love that community that is growing out of it. That's the thing that has had the biggest impact on me.
Awesome. Well, Chris Wheeler, Chief of Staff at GitHub, thank you very much. It's been fantastic.
It's been a pleasure. Appreciate the time.